The rain was cold that night, not just the kind that falls from the sky but the kind that soaks your soul. Mia sat behind the wheel of her old, beaten-down sedan, windshield wipers smearing more than clearing, her baby girl whimpering in the car seat behind her. She had just signed the divorce papers that morning. 7 years of marriage had ended with a lawyer sliding a thick envelope across the table, filled with words like, irreconcilable differences, and, sole custody. And now, with nowhere else to go, she pulled into the cracked parking lot of a motel that didn't even try to look welcoming. A flickering neon sign read, Sunset Inn, though there hadn't been a sunset worth watching in Mia's world for months. The room cost her $37 for the night. That was half the cash in her purse. She picked up Lily, her 1-year-old daughter, whose head rested against her shoulder like a final thread holding Mia together. The room smelled of mildew and broken dreams, thin sheets, a buzzing ceiling fan, and wallpaper peeling like old skin. But it was shelter. She didn't cry in front of Lily. Not yet. She sang her daughter a lullaby, rocking her gently until sleep claimed the baby's tiny fists and twitching toes. Only then did Mia sit at the edge of the bed, her head in her hands, and let herself fall apart. She didn't know the man in room 6 next door could hear her sobs. And she didn't know those sobs would keep him awake all night. In room 6, Daniel sat in silence, the TV off, staring at the water stains on the ceiling. He was in town for work, or rather, to escape it. A tech executive turned reluctant wanderer, Daniel had spent the past year alone since the death of his fiancée. His company had tried to drag him back with offers of bonuses and promotions. But money meant nothing now. Not without her. He heard the baby first. Then the quiet hush of a woman's voice, trembling through the thin walls. Then crying. Raw, unguarded sobs that reached into his own grief like a mirror. He got up once, hand hovering over the door. But what would he say? Hey, I heard your heartbreak. Want to talk? No, he wasn't that brave. So instead, he stayed up and listened. The next morning, Mia looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were swollen, and Lily wouldn't stop coughing. She didn't have medicine, didn't have a pediatrician anymore, didn't even have warm milk. Her phone battery was dead. There were no chargers, and she was afraid to leave the room in case someone took her daughter. She didn't see the note slipped under her door until late morning. There's a diner 2 blocks away, go get something warm to eat. It's paid for. Tell them Dan sent you. You're not invisible. There was no signature. Her heart froze. She clutched Lily tighter. For a moment, fear crept in. Who knew her name? Who knew where she was? But then, her stomach growled. And her baby needed food. Against her instincts, she walked to the diner and whispered, Dan sent me. They handed her a hot breakfast, juice for the baby, and a smile that didn't ask for anything in return. That afternoon, a knock at her door startled her. She opened it slightly, holding the chain in place. A man stood outside, not threatening, not pushy, just kind eyes. I'm the guy next door. You don't have to be afraid. I just heard you crying. That's all. No expectations. I know what it's like to fall apart quietly. I just wanted you to know, you're not alone. Mia didn't speak, just nodded, and quietly closed the door. But something shifted inside her, just a little. Over the next few days, Dan left small things at her door. A pack of diapers, a charger, a note that read, your baby's cough, maybe this can help, and a small bottle of infant-safe medicine. Mia never asked, and Dan never forced conversation, but their silence began to feel safe. One evening, there was another knock. But this time, it was different. Mia opened the door, holding Lily, and found Dan standing with 2 paper cups of hot cocoa. I figured, maybe it's time we sat on the steps for a while. No talking, just cocoa. So they did. They sat on the cracked steps of the motel under a dim porch light, and watched the traffic pass. Lily giggled, pointing at cars. Mia smiled for the first time in days. Dan finally asked, where would you go if you had wings? Mia laughed. Anywhere but here. He looked at her. What if I told you here could be enough? That sometimes, the broken places grow flowers too. She didn't answer. But she didn't stop smiling either. End of chapter 1. Clapperboard. If you've made it this far, don't go yet. The next chapter will melt your heart. Please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the miracle that's about to happen, because what happens next in room 5 and room 6 will make you believe in love again. The days turned into a quiet routine. Not planned, not agreed upon, just naturally formed between two people surviving under the same fading roof. Mia would rise early, bundle Lily in her arms, and walk her outside to catch the first rays of morning. Some mornings, she'd find something leaning against her door, a warm muffin, a pack of baby wipes, or a bottle of water with a sticky note that simply said, "For the warrior mom." She didn't know how he knew what she needed each day. But Dan always did, and while they never talked long, the porch steps slowly became their shared living room. Some nights, Lily would fall asleep with her head on Mia's chest while Dan read quietly from his notebook, his voice soft, the pages worn. She never asked what he was reading. Until one evening, after the sky had turned lavender and Lily was snoring softly, Mia leaned in. "What are you writing?" Dan closed the notebook slowly and looked out at the distant streetlights. "Letters I never sent." To her. Mia knew. She didn't need more explanation. The pain in his eyes told her everything. "My fiancée," he finally said. "She passed away last winter. Car accident. I was on a video call when she left the office. I didn't even say goodbye. Not really. So now I write to her, even if she'll never read them." Mia reached out, her hand brushing his. "Then maybe she reads them in the wind." Dan turned to her, surprised by the gentleness in her voice. He smiled. "Maybe she does." That night, Mia cried again. Not because she was alone, but because, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel lonely. 2 weeks passed. Mia still couldn't find a job, though she tried every day. She'd walk downtown, asking diners and stores, but her resume was thin and her clothes made her look like someone life had pushed around. And when people looked at Lily in her arms, they saw a burden, not a blessing. It broke her spirit. Slowly, one night, she sat on the porch holding Lily as Dan joined her. His presence was now as predictable as the stars. "No luck today?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "I don't want handouts, Dan. I'm not proud, but I'm trying to stand on my own." For her. Dan paused for a long moment. Then asked, "What did you want to be before all this?" Mia laughed bitterly. "A children's book illustrator." "Silly, right? I had sketchbooks full of ideas. Then I got married, got distracted. Life happened, and now it's just gone." Dan didn't reply, not with words. Instead, he stood, went into his room, and returned minutes later with a tablet. He handed it to her. "I downloaded a drawing app. I want you to draw something. Anything." She blinked, hesitant. "Dan, I haven't picked up a pencil in years." "Then, start now." She touched the screen tentatively. And with Lily asleep in her arms, Mia drew her first picture in 5 years, a little girl reaching toward the moon. The lines were shaky, the proportions off, but something about it was alive. Dan looked at it and smiled softly. "You still got it, Mia." Her throat tightened. "Why are you doing all this?" He looked at her with such sincerity it made her heart ache. "Because someone once did it for me. And because you're not broken. You're just waiting for your next chapter." One rainy afternoon, Lily developed a fever. A high one. Her tiny body burned in Mia's arms, her whimpers sharp, her skin pale. Panic took over. Mia rushed out barefoot, banging on Dan's door. He opened instantly. One look at Mia's tear-streaked face and Lily's limp frame, and he was already grabbing his keys. They sped to the hospital, Mia clutching her baby in the backseat while Dan ran red lights like a man chasing time. At the emergency room, the doctors took Lily from her arms. It felt like her world was being torn again. Dan stayed beside her the entire night, holding her hand in silence. He didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. When the doctor finally returned with a calm smile and said, "It's a viral fever. She's going to be okay," Mia collapsed into Dan's arms, sobbing with relief. In that embrace, something shifted. It wasn't just safety. It was something deeper. Something that whispered, "Maybe you were meant to meet here, at your lowest, so you could rebuild from truth, not illusion." A week later, as Lily danced with her tiny steps across the motel lobby, Mia stood at the front desk and handed the clerk the last of her savings. Dan watched from behind, brows furrowed. "You're out of money," he said gently. She nodded. "I know, but I've got an interview at that children's bookstore across town. They saw my sketches." She smiled, proud, and someone, she gave him a knowing look, encouraged me to chase what I gave up. He smiled back. "You encouraged yourself. I just reminded you what you already had." Before she walked out, Dan handed her a small brown envelope. Inside it was a key. To what? She asked. He hesitated. Room 7. I'm moving out tomorrow. But the owner, he's an old friend. I paid 2 weeks in advance. Gives you time to land on your feet. Tears welled up. Dan, I can't. You can. And you will. She didn't hug him. Not then. But the look they shared said everything words never could. 3 weeks later, Mia stood at the front of a local library, holding a microphone with trembling hands. Behind her, an easel displayed her first children's book, Luna and the Room of Stars. Lily sat in the front row, clapping wildly. The story was about a little girl in a motel room who dreamed of space, whose cries were heard through walls, and who found a friend in the quiet man next door. Dan sat beside Lily, wearing the same humble smile he'd worn the first night he brought cocoa to a stranger. As Mia finished reading, the audience stood in applause. She looked at Dan. Her voice cracked as she said, "This book is dedicated to the man next door, who reminded me that even in the cheapest room with the thinnest walls, hope can still knock." Epilogue. 1 year later. The Sunset Inn was sold and turned into a small artist studio for single mothers. Mia runs it now. She and Dan married quietly in a park where Lily dropped flowers into a stream. They still drink cocoa on the steps each night. Sometimes the biggest miracles don't come with fanfare. They come when you're holding your child and the world feels like it's ending, until someone knocks, and doesn't leave. Clapperboard narrator. End hook. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe. Somewhere out there, someone is crying through a motel wall. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one who listens. Yellow heart.